A peace-building Commonwealth. That is the theme retained for this year's Commonwealth Day celebrated March 13 across the 53 member countries that make up the Commonwealth, with an estimated global population of at least 2 billion citizens living in some of the world's most advanced and poorest countries. The Commonwealth has at least 33 countries considered small nations. So, why the choice of this year's Commonwealth when last year the theme was an all-inclusive Commonwealth? There will be a message from the sovereign leader of the Commonwealth Association, Queen Elizabeth II, another one from the Commonwealth Secretary General, and member countries who celebrate the Commonwealth Day according to the realities of their own communities. Cameroon's Minister for the Commonwealth, NGUTE Joseph, welcome to GlobeWatch.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you always.
This year, the Commonwealth is celebrating its day on the theme, a peace-building Commonwealth. What is the message behind that?
Well, many people say the Commonwealth is a force for good in the world. And amongst the many good things that the Commonwealth stands for, one of them is peace. Last year we had a theme which had to do with inclusion of all people in our processes. This year we're talking about peace. And I think it's very appropriate because we know that the world over, in many areas, in many countries, there are problems. Problems caused by intolerance, problems caused by terrorism, problems caused by all other issues which affect peace and peace building. And therefore the Commonwealth wanted to showcase that theme, which is very important because without peace, there is no development.
This is a message which has been preached since the organization was shaped in its current modern format from late 1940s. Why is it that Commonwealth countries are facing an elusive or erosive peace situation?
Well, it's not only within the Commonwealth. I mean, I would say, on the contrary, that in most Commonwealth countries you have relative peace compared to other countries, because there are a number of building blocks that go into peacemaking. And in every society, one of them you'll find is democratic values, core values that the Commonwealth holds dear to itself. Values of democracy, values of good government, values of tolerance. Those are the values, the core values that the Commonwealth upholds. Now, when you have breaches of these values, the rule of law, you find that there is a breakdown in the society. And so the Commonwealth, by using the theme of peace, also indirectly highlights all the other core values that it stands for.
You just mentioned that Commonwealth countries in particular are relatively peaceful. Over the years, we have seen threats to governance, established administrations in most Commonwealth countries. I can take the case of Boko Haram in Nigeria, Cameroon. I can take the case of human rights violations in same countries I just mentioned, among others of the Commonwealth countries. But I've not seen Commonwealth countries or the Commonwealth Secretariat making bold actions and bold steps, bold declarations vis-a-vis Boko Haram, vis-a-vis human rights violations in Kenya, Uganda. Or you are just happy being called the gentleman's club?
On the contrary, I think if there is any organization par excellence that speaks out against those issues, the Commonwealth is preeminent in all of those. In its communiques, in its structure, in its mechanisms, the Commonwealth fights against violent extremism. In fact, within the Commonwealth Secretariat, they use a unit that monitors violent extremism the world over and puts out communiques and puts not only communiques and things, but also processes in fighting violent extremism. I mean, you cited the case of Boko Haram. Boko Haram indeed started as an organization that was preaching religious intolerance. Now, that organization preaching religious intolerance or extreme religious issues now transformed itself into a terrorist organization. So today, in fact, we're not talking about Boko Haram anymore as a religious extremist group, because what they are doing right now has nothing to do with religion. When you go into a mosque and you behead 100 people in a mosque, you cannot be talking about Islam. It doesn't make sense.
Let me give you a quotation of what former UN Secretary General Brutus Ghali talked about building the culture of peace or an agenda for peace in the world back in 1972 in his book, An Agenda for Peace. He qualified a peace-building community as actions to identify and support structures that tend to strengthen and solidify peace to avoid relapse into conflict. What are the structures that the Commonwealth is putting in its member countries to reshape the dynamics of peace in the world today, which is, of course, very fragile?
You're right. I mean, Boutros Boutros-Ghali is right in saying what he says. But at the end of the day, what he's saying is that peace building is also an attitude to life. It comprises the way you act, the way you think, the way you reason, the way you interact with people. It is an attitude to life. And once that attitude is right, you'll find out that most societies become peaceful and stable. When those attitudes are not right, and how they're not right? They're not right, one, by being intolerant of other people. Two, by avoiding dialogue as an instrument to solve societal problems. Where you want to take to the guns instead of taking to dialogue, of course the results are clear. So indeed, what he's saying is right. We have to attack the root causes of intolerance, the root causes of division. Those are the things that help to create peace. Peace is a process in which you get people in society to understand how to live together, how to tolerate one another, how to resolve their problems peacefully through discourse and dialogue and not through other means. Indeed, as Winston Churchill, I want to repeat, Winston Churchill used to say, we should jaw and not war. That's what he meant by dialogue and dialogue.
In the field of diplomacy, it is better to talk than to war.
Absolutely.
Who are you using concretely to deliver this message of peace in the world today? Because if you look at most terrorist organizations, which constitute one of the principal threats to peace and global stability today, they are managed. Extremism is managed by young people. Well, how are you teaching them?
Yeah, that is true, and that is why, and as you know, within the Commonwealth, 60% of the population is made up of people under 30, the age of 30. If you want to stamp out violent extremism, you've got to target the young people. Let's take our case nearby, Boko Haram. Who are the people who are being used by the masterminds of Boko Haram? They use women, young women. They use young people, young men and sometimes boys, girls. These are people who do not understand the stakes. And so it is easy to fill them up with hate and violence. So we in the Commonwealth will target the young people. Indeed, that is why the Commonwealth Day, that is celebrated on the second Monday of March, is meant to address young people. Because at that time, the world over, young people are in schools. So you can go to them in schools and give them these fundamentals that make up the very essence of how to approach life in the future.
When you talk to most young people in Commonwealth countries, they will tell you that some of them tend to extremism because they are not given opportunities. And each time you ask them, what is that kind of opportunity you need? They will tell you that the governance structure of most Commonwealth countries is hijacked by old people. The Commonwealth member countries are those governed by some of the most oldest leaders in the world. Why is it that in most Commonwealth countries, most of the leaders are people plus 70?
Well, this is purely a coincidence, I would say. You know, don't forget that even those leaders who are post after over 70 were young at one point. No, it is a process. I mean, the people choose their leaders. In any country, you go out to the ballot and you choose your leaders. In Canada, recently, we have one of the youngest prime ministers within the Commonwealth. He is very young. Mr. Trudeau, he's very young. But it doesn't mean that it's his agenda that is important. It doesn't matter whether you're 70 or whether you're 40. It is the agenda that you put across to your people. If your people buy into that agenda, then of course you are elected. And if you're elected, then you have all the legitimacy to carry out your program. So I think the issue of the young people and their ambitions is a very relevant one. I think every society has to place at the center of its agenda the issue of the development of young people. It is important because if you don't, if the young people feel that their future is not there, of course they're going to start listening to these people who have extremist ideas. And that is why in every Commonwealth society, country, the young people are at the core of the development agenda. And that is Cameroon is no exception. If you look at our national budget, for example, you'll realize that over 40% of our budget is spent on young people. If you take all the ministries of education, if you take all the ministries of youth and employment and all the others that are working towards, and of course there are some other ministries that deal with young people, health and the others, they deal with young people. But if you look at those core ministries, that you have huge budgets, they are all concentrated on the young people. And if you look at, it's not just government, of course, we create an enabling environment for private sector in order to get private sector to generate the opportunities to give more jobs to young people.
You just spoke about the private sector. It seems to me that the Commonwealth country is made up of some of the richest and some of the poorest. It seems to me that there has been a terrible gap in the transfer of competence or knowledge or technology between the developed Commonwealth and the least developed Commonwealth. How are you bridging that gap to make a more inclusive Commonwealth society, as last year's theme of celebration indicated?
Yes, that is a very important area. I mean, the divide between the North and the South. It is indeed a reality. But within the Commonwealth, we are trying to bridge those gaps. One, in the digital area, we are doing everything through the Commonwealth of Learning, through other institutions in the Commonwealth, to make sure that we bridge this gap. Because there is a possibility of what the English call leapfrogging. Leapfrogging simply means that you don't have to go through all the prior processes the developed countries went through. You can leapfrog, you can jump, because the technology is at our disposal right now, especially the digital technology. So you can move into the modern world without going through the other processes which the developed countries went through. And that is really important. In other areas, within the Commonwealth, we have a number of facilities that assist, especially in the areas dealing with trade, industrialization and the like. We have areas where the Commonwealth can share their experiences with the less developed countries, that is the rich countries can share with the less developed countries, and that makes it easier for the countries to move ahead with the agenda.
You are very much aware that when there is justice, the rule of law, good governance, ensured and sustained development, communities are more at ease and are more peaceful. This is what the UN's General Assembly's policy paper in 2007 spoke about building peace in the world. It is a range of measures targeted to reduce the risk of lapsing or relapsing into conflict by strengthening national capacity at all levels for conflict management and to lay the foundation of sustainable peace and development. If you take a country like Afghanistan, Pakistan, which is a Commonwealth member country, you and I know the history of Pakistan so well, or Sri Lanka. Are there national policies that really go into the local realities of the people to streamline a culture of peace?
Yes, of course. I would say there are two wings to this bird, as it were. One wing is, I will call it the software. It is these processes: democracy, good governance, rule of law, tolerance, religious intolerance, all of that is one wing. Other wing must also be strong, and that wing is the development wing. Because you've got to create this environment for the young people. You also have to give them opportunities that they can move ahead. For example, the creation of industries, the creation of economic institutions, the opening up of the private sector, releasing their potential which they have. So those two wings are important, and it is important to create those two, because if you create only one, I mean, we take, for example, in the area where we have the Boko Haram causing untold hardship on people, a number of economic institutions have broken down by dint of the attacks of Boko Haram. So it is important in not only teaching these young people how to tolerate, how to live well in society, how to have democratic values, but also in creating these institutions that have broken down, in creating the development that they need, because they must be useful to their societies as well in order to have themselves appreciated.
The Commonwealth in 2017 is living in the post-Brexit era. The Commonwealth in 2017 is living in the era of the Trump presidency. The Commonwealth in 2017 is living in a world where populist governments are increasingly coming in power in most countries around the world, starting with the United Kingdom. How is the Commonwealth reshaping its global policy dynamics in this new environment where the immigration laws are becoming more tougher, where the traditional politics are being kicked aside? How are you networking today?
Yes, it's a new phenomenon. We are witnessing the world over the growth of inward-looking leaders. Without
the period of nationalism.
Yeah,
multinational organizations like the Commonwealth
exactly
are given very little consideration in this new environment, where international engagement is seen as an impediment to national problems.
Well, we think that is happening, yes. Sometimes it is a situational issue. Some leaders, in order to get power, use that language, which sometimes attracts in the short run. But I think in the long run, the values of international cooperation, the values of peace, the values of humanity, humaneness, the values of understanding and empathy, those are eternal values that are always going to prevail.
If you look at the number of people who are considered illegal immigrants or who are crossing the Mediterranean today to go to Europe, they mostly come from Commonwealth countries that are in Africa: Nigeria, Cameroon, Uganda, and many of them. Why is it that Commonwealth countries have failed so much south of the Sahara in providing a suitable future for their citizens?
Well, I think for the first, I beg your pardon for this, but I will challenge that view that there are a majority from Commonwealth countries. I think that countries south of the Sahara have certain situations that we must face. The youth in those countries also have certain situations that we must face. What we are saying is that migration must be orderly. What we see, the phenomenon we see in the Mediterranean with hundreds and hundreds of people losing their lives, it's very sorrowful. And it's an indictment on Africans that young people should go out and perish in that way. So migration must be controlled today. States are organized. No, they don't want people to enter the borders willy-nilly. So it is important to organize it. Even us here in Cameroon, we cannot allow ourselves to be flooded left, right, and center. Even the ordinary man on the street will not accept that.
One of the arguments for BRIC exit was that trade volume between the Commonwealth countries and the United Kingdom will be more than that of the European Union by 2020, expected to be at least 20 billion pounds a year. The new environment in which we are living, that of Donald Trump, that of Theresa May, that of Marine Le Pen or Emmanuel Macron in France, is one national organizations like yours where there should be multilateral trade. According to the Commonwealth, which trade deals are better for a more peaceful society? Bilateral economic deals or multilateral economic engagements?
I will say both. I will say both. First of all, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, has put in place a system of multilateral trade. Now, that system will continue to go on. So whether you are dealing with the EU or you are dealing with Britain, or you is still a part of the WTO system. So that will continue to go on. And in this connection, I want to tell you that the Commonwealth plays a very important role, because the Commonwealth has been an advisory institution, advising the less developed countries on how to proceed with their trade negotiations with the more advanced countries. Because of course, these deals are very, very technical. Sometimes you need people who have a mastery of how to negotiate. That's the first case. Secondly, bilateral trade will always exist also. It is true that Britain leaving the EU, the European Union, now gives certain possibilities and for non-EU members to get trade deals with Britain that may be favorable. Indeed, there is talk, especially during the last foreign ministers meeting in New York. There is already ongoing discussions by Britain and other members of the Commonwealth on how to enhance the trade that existed amongst them.
Mr. Minister, let us conclude with a question which has to do with home politics. Yeah. For roughly 3 months now, there has been disturbances in the northwest and southwest region of the country. And this is a Commonwealth member state in what has been called the Anglophone problem. Yeah. As somebody who comes from that region, do you first of all believe that there is an Anglophone problem? And if yes or no, do you think from the position of the Commonwealth, if you are authorized to voice a comment, will you accept that children remain home without going to school?
No, I think this gives me an opportunity to factor in a very critical issue, this issue of children not going to school. As has been said, time without number by a number of people, there is a huge human right issue concerning children's access to education. It is a fundamental human rights issue. For no reason should anybody hijack that right of children to go to school. It is their right. We went through school unhampered by anybody, and that's why we are who we are today. The children today should be allowed to go to school. They should be not even allowed. Everything should be done for them to go to school, because losing so many months, they are months which they can never get back. Those months are gone. Even if they start going to school again, they have lost already 3 months. And that's a very important issue. And within those 3 months, nobody knows exactly what has transpired through their minds. Children's minds are very delicate. They're very fragile. So it is important for children to go back to school. Now, on the other issues of whether people have problems, and of course every group of people have problems. That there are problems is not strange. It's not even new. However, the management of those problems is the issue. And we as a Commonwealth country, as part of the Commonwealth, we believe in peaceful dialogue in the resolution of problems. And that is exactly what the head of state said in his New Year's Eve speech, when he said that, yes, maybe we've not got it right all the time, but we should resolve our problems peacefully. We shouldn't get into any extremist positions. One last thing. In most societies that have our configuration, you take Canada, they also went through a lot of problems. There is a French-speaking minority. And indeed, in the 60s, the Canadians put together a commission which they called the Royal Commission on Bilingualism and Biculturalism. And it was exactly to get people to sit around the table. So I'm urging all the actors in this area to stop digging their heels in, to stop using extremism, the language of extremism, to understand that as Cameroonians, we are in one boat, going towards one direction, and if there are problems within that boat, we know how to resolve those problems. It's not by leaving the boat and jumping into the sea that will resolve.
We'll all sing together.
We'll all sing together.
The Minister for Commonwealth Activities, Dr. NGUTE Joseph, thank you very much indeed for being guest on Globe Watch.
Thank you very much indeed. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you.